Hello and welcome to Woke Watch, an ongoing series of videos where I find the wokest content on the internet and together we can pick it apart to expose woke ideology for the bullshit it really is. Today we'll be returning to the gift that keeps on giving, the wokest of all woke ideologies, gender ideology. And if you're new to this channel, I want to make clear I have nothing against trans, queer, non-binary people per se. I do have an issue with the cult-like behaviour of that group of people and members of the community who make ridiculous demands, demanding that the rest of us change our language or even ignore the evidence of our own eyes just to make them feel better. Wokeness is often feelings over logic. So for about a year now, we've been hearing about the trans genocide. A genocide which is unique because all those claiming to be genocided are alive and well to tell us about it. I'll begin with a clip which I've had to mute to get around copyright. So that confused young man, because that's what he is, feels he is the victim of genocide because within the LGBTQIA+ community, the homosexuals and bisexuals, the L's, the G's and the B's, many of them are cutting ties with the rest of that community. And who can blame them? Because you have LGB and then it's just a fucking circus. I think it goes without saying that people not wanting to be friends with you isn't the same as genocide. And I have to say that within the TQ cult, the trans, the queer, the non-binaries, 99% of their problems are entirely self-inflicted. Trans people have been around forever, but it's only the last few years where they've been so fucking militant in forcing their ideology down everyone's throat. In particular, kids. We'll get back to that after we've seen this clip of a trans woman talking about the dangers which new laws are imposing on the trans community.
For most of you, using a public bathroom is pretty straightforward. You have the urge to go. You get up and walk into a designated restroom, no questions asked. You do your business. Hopefully wash your hands and continue on your day. However, for the transgender community, that isn't always the case.
I've cut that short because that woman rattles on for another 3 minutes. The long and the short of it is she is attempting to use statistics, saying that 42% of trans women have attempted to check themselves out early. That rises to 46% of trans men. Now, I have more sympathy for trans men because many trans women are actually just transvestites. People with autogynephilia, they get a kick from dressing as women and invading women's spaces. Many trans men are actually young women who've been misdiagnosed with severe autism. They're told they're trans. That isn't the issue. They have an information processing problem, and before they know it, they're on hormones and they've had a double mastectomy. And for most people, I think that's the issue. Stop trying to transition kids. Don't brainwash them with your own woke ideology to try and make being transgender more normal than it actually is. Now, there's one more statistic in which the trans woman says that 59% of trans people who've been denied access to the bathroom with which they self-identify have attempted to check themselves out early also. So, first of all, this is nasty, but I'll say it, attempting is not the same as doing. I would love to have sex with Nita Strauss. I would attempt to. I doubt that would come to fruition. Personally, I think if not being able to go for a shit in the bathroom of your choice is the reason giving for ending your own life, there's a lot more going on up there. But let's run with it. Let's run with those statistics. Let's say laws are being brought in which will encourage trans people to self-delete. There are certain words you can't say on YouTube. And we've seen the evil lesbians, gays and bisexuals are now bullying the trans people. Basically, the people that did all the work before the trans crew came in and fucked it all up. They're being nasty to the trans brigade. And I've seen claims from some trans people that they are being actively hunted down and killed in the streets. There is no video evidence of this whatsoever. In fact, the whole trans genocide thing is a massive lie, which I will now expose. Hunted down and killed in the streets. A genocide. An organisation called Sex Matters carried out research this year in the UK, and it found that trans-identifying individuals are 10 times less likely to be murdered than members of the general population. So if the trans community are in the middle of a genocide, the rest of us are right royally fucked. And as for the bathroom thing, why shouldn't trans women be allowed to use female-only spaces like toilets and locker rooms? Well, trans women are 5 times more likely than the average man in the street to be sex offenders. Is that a valid reason for not letting groups of people, many of whom who are just cross-dressing perverts, who are statistically far more likely to be grapists without the G, into female-only spaces? Now, if I said I identify as a 5-year-old, I want to get changed with the little children, I would hope anyone who heard that would insist I was strung up from the nearest fucking lamppost. Of course, I'm not saying that all trans women are sex offenders, but statistically that group of people is more of a danger to women and girls than any other in Western society. And make no mistake, there will be men who'll play on this. Transvestites who want to be in female-only spaces to do despicable things. And am I too much of a cynic for thinking that 59% of people who've attempted to commit suicide, that should get me round it, may have done so to get attention? So they can say, if I'm not allowed to go and get my girl dick out in front of the women and girls, I'm going to take my own life. Of course, I'm forgetting that trans women know more about women than actual females.
Okay, I've literally done hundreds more hours of research into this than you have, but let's read your comments anyway. It's literally common sense that not having a uterus means no period. LMAO. Enough of that. Okay, so let's go over a couple of the facts here. Does everyone who have a uterus have a period? No. Does everyone who have a period have a uterus? Also no. When it reaches a certain level in the body, then you can still get the cramping, the bloating, the emotional sensitivity, and the emotional instability when that time of the month comes around. Thinking of the menstrual flow, the shedding of the inner uterine lining that may require some sort of cleanup like a Dixie cup. You don't know anything.
I have another clip, which I'm not going to include, but it's this trans woman, hard to tell that delicate feminine flower was born a man, where he says almost exactly the same thing. It's nigh on verbatim, like it's being passed around internet groups to be repeated and repeated. And what strikes me is the fetishization that some trans women have about periods, something that only happens to women. Because if you don't have a uterus, and I can't believe I'm having to say this, you cannot have a period. I've said it before and I will say it again. I honestly believe that the majority of trans women know less about actual women than the average straight man in the street, because I know that being a woman isn't a fetish, it isn't a costume, it isn't playing dress up. Being female is something I will never and can never experience. Now, for our mate there with his periods, I think what's happening is that gentleman is smashing himself full of estrogen. He's raising his hormone levels of that hormone to levels where they should not be, and he's experiencing side effects. Because any chemical imbalance has side effects. In the same way that if you drink a bottle of whiskey, you may find your ability to drive becomes somewhat impaired. And if I started using heroin, the side effects may be that I lose 5 stone and become a rent boy. It just struck me why it may be that trans people are less likely to be murdered. And I think even serial killers would avoid them, because someone who has the urge to go out and murder doesn't want to get lectured for half an hour before they can deliver the fatal blow. Another strange thing about the trans community, particularly trans women, is the insistence that we find them attractive and date them.
You refuse to date transgender folks. Is that transphobic? Now, I'm talking about people who say they accept trans people as their gender, who date people of that gender, but won't date them. Like, if you won't date someone from Mars because they're space aliens and you're afraid they're going to lay eggs in your torso, that's one thing. But if you say that someone born on Mars is a human, but refuse to date that person, well, that's something else. Now, preference is wanting Evian bottled water over Dasani, but if you were thirsty, you would drink either one. Please, for the love of God, don't tell me you would refuse either one of those two over the other, because
As usual, the attempt at logic makes no sense whatsoever. Let's pick over 2 points. Not wanting to date someone from Mars, but if they were a human from Mars, that would be different. I believe that's just xenophobia. Not wanting to date someone because they're from a different place is very common, something which I believe we all do. And the difference is, a person from Mars could be just another human. But if, for me, as a straight man, that human has a dick, I don't want to date them. And then the bottled water thing, Evian and Dasani. I've never been so desperate for a fuck that I thought I need to go out and shag a man in a dress. It's odd that so many of the trans community will scream bigotry if we don't accept them. But if we demand the same thing, the same acceptance that we don't find them attractive or we don't want to be around them or whatever, instantly it's transphobia and a fucking hate crime. But I am happy that people are starting to wake up and seeing that this movement is so fucking toxic that there are parodies on it. This is a clip from a woman called Mary Kate. It is the funniest thing you will see all week.
It's day 1 of trans girlhood. Hi everyone, I'm Mary Kate. I'm an AFAB trans woman, and I know I've always been a trans woman, so this isn't really only day 1. But ever since I came out, I've been getting comments that I don't really quite pass as a trans woman yet, so I wanted to document my transition journey. The most common critique I've been getting is that I'm just too clean to pass as a trans woman. So I decided to sprinkle some Cheeto dust and trash all over my keyboard to really nail that look. It's really hard for me to unlearn my female socialization, but I am starting to use my floor as an all-purpose hamper and trash can. Next up, I put some olive oil in my hair to really nail that greasy, unkempt trans look, taking special care to do the makeup of trans culture. Oh my god, I'm so happy to finally be expressing my authentic self. One of the things that makes me really dysphoric is that no one can see my gender euphoria, so I'm just gonna take this little packer and I'm gonna put it where my she-ness should be, you know? Perfect! Alright everyone, I'm off to masturbate to anime porn all day. I love you, bye!
That's the end of this video. I'll just say this. Like I said at the start, I do not hate trans people or queer people or non-binary or whatever. What I do despise is the woke movement and their double standards. They want love and acceptance, but they do it by acting like fascists. As ever, thanks for watching. Oh, fucking hell. The argument about Evian and Dasani. Do they still sell that shit in the USA? I think that was very briefly over here in the late 1990s. That man, fetishization, I can't say it. The thing about periods, it used to just be radical feminists who went on about it. Now there are men who can't have periods insisting that they are. What a time to be alive. Oh, hello. See you later. Switch off, you fucker.